Hey there, crewmates! It's your boy Gabe from Nexus Core here with another video, and I am quite excited for this one because as of I think about a day or two ago, we got the full spoiler announced for the upcoming Starter Deck 5 based on the One Piece films. So if you don't know, this was announced a while ago, I think with the initial announcement of the card game. It was just going to be released separate from the initial 4, and I would like to thank everybody at OnePieceCardGame.dev for providing these translations. I wish I have had really no other way of being able to find these. The website that you would have seen my other card reviews for has not updated with all of the film cards yet, and this was the only place I could find that is fully revealed, and I didn't want to go cherry picking through a bunch of different things to make what would be a glorified Google spreadsheet. So, I want to go over these because I've seen some of these before, and I think a lot of these cards are quite interesting, and I want to go over this, and I'll go over these cards as a deck as a whole, but also how it functions with some of the prior purple cards that we've had. So first we're going to start off with the leader. I think it makes perfect sense that the leader is going to be Shanks for the upcoming film Red. I don't know how they would make a deck involving Film Red and have Shanks not be the leader, considering he is one of like 3 canon characters from the films. So they're really at least doing my boy justice. So he is the average monocolor leader, so 5,000 power, 5 life, slash attribute, film, 4 emperor, and red-haired pirates as his attributes. And his ability is during the main phase, you can go Dawn -3. Your film type characters gain power plus 2,000 during this turn. This is interesting. So this definitely, for obvious reasons, reminds me of the red-haired Zoro. I'm a bit torn because on the one hand, you have to go Dawn minus to give you get more power than Red Zoro, but you have to go Dawn minus, whereas with Zoro you just have to give him a Dawn, which is barely even a cost. But at the same time, it is purple, so it isn't the aggro deck, so being able to hit numbers definitely helps. And if Kid does wind up seeing a lot of place in the meta, I think that this is a pretty, at least decent answer to him being able to get things up by 2k. And yeah, I think this is a solid ability. If nothing else, yeah, this is I don't think it's a great generic leader as it only applies to film characters, so there isn't really a reason to run a normal Beast Pirate deck with this as the leader, or the Orochi Smile deck that I want to try brewing. But I think this is pretty okay as a leader. From what I can tell with the deck, unlike Kaido, where it's a lot of where there's a couple incidental -1 or 2 Dawn here there. Normally you wait for one gigantic Dawn minus. I believe how this works is you are going to be minusing Dawn quite consistently, relatively speaking, but you have a lot of means of getting the Dawn back, so you're not actually being set back. So next we have Ein, who is a 4-cost 5,000 special type film and Neo Navy attribute, whose effect is on play, add 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and rest it. I think this is fine. It's film, so it helps with what Shanks wants to do. Shanks' effect would make her a 7k, which is definitely not something to scoff at. And from what we've seen with the Beast Pirate ones, normally they have a cost or other stipulation. The closest thing we have to this, I believe, is the 4-drop Basil Hawkins, who, while he does have a counter, has much less power. So I think Ein is a solid card, considering this seems to be a more aggressive deck as opposed to a control-oriented one that the Kaido deck winds up being. Next, we have Anne, who is a Film and Pirate Fest type, whose cost is 2, power is 3, and is a special type, and she is just a blocker, just a bog standard blocker, which a start deck is certainly going to need. Wow, I did not mean to do that. Next, we are going to have Uta. I believe this was the very first card revealed for this start deck, who is a 4-cost 5,000 power special attribute with a counter 1,000. Her only type is film. She is a blocker, and her effect is on block. You can go Dawn -1 to rest an opponent's character with the cost of 5 or less. I think this is quite strong, actually, because there are a lot of cards in that 5 or less range that you're definitely going to want to stop. If your opponent has something like Basil Hawkins out, or Trafalgar Law. Those are fives. There is the start deck Luffy, which while it has Rush, is another five for prior turns. There are quite a few cards in that five or less range that you would definitely want to have tapped down, at least to stop an attack on their turn, or just give yourself a bit of breath to stop one of your opponent's attacks that they would be doing. So this is a solid card. Next is Karina. I think this is another good card with that will reference how you get some of your Dawn back. She is cost 2, power 3, wisdom attribute. Her types are Film and Grand Tesoro, and her counter is 1000. Once per turn during the main phase, you can rest this character, and you may trash one film type card from your hand. If your opponent has more Dawn on their field than you do, add 2 Dawn from your Dawn deck and rest them. I think this is quite solid. I don't being able to just get rid of dead cards in your hand to just get more Dawn after you go minus, I think is definitely something this deck is going to want to do. I think this is quite solid, and I think this is definitely something you're going to want to be using in a film deck. And it really helps you not suffer from having to go Dawn minus, or like if you're behind on curve by going Dawn minus, you can just use this as soon as you need to. So I really like this. Next is Gil Tesoro, 5 cost, 6 power, special attribute, Film and Grand Tesoro types as well. His ability is when he's attacking, you can go Dawn -2 to draw 2 cards. I think this is a very strong effect solely because purple is not really the color of card draw. The closest analog to this effect that we have is Queen, who is on place as opposed to when attacking, so theoretically Tesoro does have a reusability, and Queen's draw, is a draw 2, discard 1, whereas this is a firm draw 2, and granted, Queen still has blocker, but this is just another way of drawing cards, which I think purple would definitely love to have, as even Kaido decks, just to potentially lower some of your heavily costed cards that you don't necessarily want to see in the early game and being able to just draw into them. This is another piece of added consistency in any Dawn Ramp deck, so I think this is definitely a good card. Next, because it's a start deck, we have another obligatory vanilla, who is Gordon, who is just a film type. I think he's from Film Red, but I don't know yet. So he is a just generic 1 cost, 3000 power, wisdom attribute, counter 1, just a vanilla. Next is Shiki. Shout out to my boy, whose cost is 6, power is 7, attribute is slash, typing is Film and the Golden Lion Pirates, who also has a counter of 1000. His effect is if you have 8 or more Dawn on your field, this character cannot be KO'd in battle. I am unsure how I feel about this, solely because it has decent stats, but requiring 8 Dawn means you either are not using it the turn you use Shanks' effect, or you're going to need to use Shanks' effect and have, like, Karina up to help Shiki get there. And something like the issues I had with the King Leader is having a lot of Dawn can be, when you want to go Dawn minus, isn't phenomenal. So I really don't know how to feel about this. It's a 7k hitter, and with Shanks becomes a 9k, and the fact that it's unkillable by battle is definitely not anything to be mocked for. As well, 7k base stat is solid, so this is probably the card with an effect that I'm the most hesitant on, but I think that this definitely has some potential, and if you want to run a pure film deck, I don't think is a bad card, but from what I've seen so far, it looks like you're probably going to want to at least dip into the prior purple pool that we have of other cards, like what some of the Kaidos or Kings, as opposed to being able to run Shiki. But I don't think this is a bad card. It is a start deck. These are going to just have some filler. Next is Scarlet, the weird friggin' monkey gets a card, I guess. So he is a cost 2, 3000 power, strike attribute, counter 1000, trigger, play this card. Types are Film, Animal, and Gold Lion Pirate. Again, start deck vanilla. Next we have Z, or Zephyr, or Zed, who is a 7 cost, 8000 power, strike attribute, and his types are Film and the Neo Navy. So if this character battles a strike attribute character, it gets plus 3,000 power. As well, you can go Dawn -1 to give him an additional 2,000 power. I think this is quite solid. I don't love. Well, I mean, this it's a balance. So what am I saying? I was going to say I didn't love how it only worked on characters, but working against a strike attribute leader would just be kind of unfair, being an 11,000 beater against that. But this is quite solid. If there is a strong strike card that you just need to get rid of, I believe most of the Kaido main deck ones are strikers. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. So being able to hit over them without needing to put Dawn under it is good. Being able to go Dawn -1 just for 2,000 is also definitely not bad. So Zephyr can hit quite hard, and I think that makes Zephyr for a solid card for the film deck. And next we have, I'm guessing this is the big shiny card for the start deck, is Douglas Bullet, who is a 8 cost, 10,000 power special attribute, film and Pirate Fest type character, whose effect is once per turn during the main phase, you can go Dawn -4, rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters with 6 or less cost, and then this character gets double attack. I think this is quite good. This is a very solid aggro card. Being able to just rest 2 of your opponent's blockers, regardless of their power, I think is just quite powerful and definitely not something that should be overlooked. And as we all know, if you've watched most of my other videos, I'm not a fan of Yamato in green, but Douglas Bullet has the stats to make the double attack worth it. As well, the own in effect ability to ignore blockers effectively by resting them means this is definitely a hard one and a great card to have double attack on. And I kind of like how this pairs with Shanks. You are likely not going to use both of these the same turn because it does cost you 7 Dawn, but at the same time you can really just kind of mix and match depending on the situation. If you just need to get in a decent amount of attacks of relative strength, Shanks is going to be your guy. If you really just need to go for a hit, probably Douglas Bullet. So I like both of these, and I think Bullet is a solid card. I don't know if it's going to really see plays in the Kaido deck. Honestly, it might, just because that 8 cost as opposed to, say, 9 or 10 might actually give this some place in one of the Kaido decks. So I really like Bullet as a card. Next, another vanilla in the form of Baccarat, 3 cost, 5 power, special attribute, counter 1, film and Grand Tesoro type. Then is Beans, who is 4 cost, 6,000 power, special attribute, film and Neo Navy type with another counter 1,000. Next is Buena Festa, who is a 1 cost, 0 power, wisdom attribute, film and Pirate Fest types, whose counter is 2,000, and on play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a film card other than himself, add it to your hand, and bottom of deck the rest. So, this is the purple equivalent, or I guess the film specifically equivalent version of the Romance Dawn Nami for Straw Hats, which makes this quite good. I actually like how Festa has 0 power and instead has the counter. Like, it's very... I would imagine you're most likely going to want to play Festa just for the advantage, but at the same time, having 2 counter is not bad at all. So I think this is a great card, especially for this deck. Next, we have Dr. Indigo, who is a 2/4 film scientist and Golden Lion pirate type, counter 1,000, and he is a vanilla. And lastly, we're going to end it with the event cards. So there is Lion's Threat, Imperial Earth Bind, who is a 3 cost event with a film and Gold Lion Pirates as its typing. Main, Dawn -2. You can KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less, and trigger is the usual purple add a Dawn from your Dawn deck and set it as active. I think this is very strong. The closest thing we have available to this is the Brachio Bomber, which, while Lion's Threat makes you go Dawn -2, Brachio Bomber gives you 1 Dawn. Brachio Bomber also costs twice as much as this, which I think is great for this card because you can pay the 3 and then just go -2 with those Dawn and just be able to clean up a lot of 5s. Being able to if you had 2 of these going Dawn -4 to kill 2 5 costs is quite good. So I think this is a very solid card, and I really like this, and this honestly, again, might be one that sneaks its way into a Kaido list. And lastly, the last card for the start deck is Union Armado, who is a 2-cost event with Film and Pirate Fest as its attributes, who is counter up to one of your film leaders or characters gains 4,000, which is usual for a 2-cost event. And if that card is a character, it cannot be KO'd during this turn. Trigger, add 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and set it as active. This is very good. I think this is a very, very good card. I don't know how many purple cards yet you really, really want to give that protection to. If you're playing, say, a Kaido deck, the 4,000 means they're probably not going to hit over a Kaido because that would make them 14,000. This is definitely a thing that is great in this deck to protect either Zed or Douglas Bullet. But this has a lot of potential to age very well just because free knockout potential during the turn is very good. And it also doesn't specify, like with Zephyr does with the strike attribute, it doesn't specify by battle. So if you're in a purple mirror match where you're going to get a control effect to knock it out, you could effectively avoid one of those effects, which I think makes for a very, very solid card. And I think this is a fantastic event. So, looking at it as a whole, the down and dirty is it certainly is a start deck. There are a lot of cards that will be cut probably quite immediately just for the sake of playing better cards. I think this deck, based on how many cards go Dawn minus, and the only way you have of Dawn ramping, unfortunately, is Karina. So I feel like if you want to play a film deck, you're probably going to want to run Onigashima anyways. I'd probably drop the Scarlet for that, just because being able to get that Dawn every turn, I think, is very important, especially with this deck. I'm trying to think of what other good purple cards people would want to run besides, like, the generic staples like Borrow Breath. But I think this deck is definitely one because of how film oriented it is. We are going to need to wait until the upcoming set 2 after Romance Dawn just to hopefully have more film cards, because I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, please, there are any purple film cards that are currently out prior to this. I know Red has access to an Uta and a Gordon. I don't know if they are film, but even if they are, this is mono purple, so it doesn't matter. So I think this deck is definitely going to need some help, but I think purple has a solid enough foundation in what has already come before to at least make this a bit stronger. Cards like Onigashima, like I said before, and honestly, you may even want to run the Thunder Bagua, because if you have 2 or less life, that lets you Dawn ramp 1, and there are quite a few Dawn minus effects here, and just being able to play, being able to not miss that, I think, is going to be very important. And probably Queen just for added consistency, and it's a 5/6 with blocker for the draw 2, discard 1, so yeah, I think those are some of the initial changes. They're not film attributes, so of course they wouldn't be affected by Shanks or be searchable off of Bonafesta. But I think the power of cards like that will really help this deck where it needs it. I just don't think there's a reason to run Scarlet. Baccarat and Bins kind of make sense because they can hit good numbers off of Shanks. No reason to run Gordon. Yeah, I think the biggest problem this deck has as a start deck is it really doesn't have the ramp to justify it, because as there are so many more means of losing Dawn than gaining Dawn, even if you have Karina, that is a kill on sight. That is its own Jewelry Bonnie, so you're likely going to resolve it once and then it will die. But also it has the problem of you need to discard 1, and while you have Guilt Azor to get the draws, it doesn't have an absurd amount of getting advantage outside of some other hopefully potential purple staples. So I think the deck has a decent core, but I think overall it is a bit too overcosted and doesn't do much. And also it only has 1 blocker for Anne, which seems odd to me. This deck, I feel as though you're going to want to get a lot of big beefy boys out like Shiki, Zed, and Bullet and keep them on the field and just attack with them and then pump them up with Shanks. but there aren't enough blockers of low cost to keep them there, so you might even want to run a low blocker just for that reason. Like, if you have 8 done, you could go Shiki and Anne, Zephyr, and I don't actually know offhand if purple has a 1-drop blocker, but if they do. So, I think this deck needs help. I think it has a very cool idea with a lot of Dawn minusing to get these neat effects that aren't just control based. And I think it's an interesting take on purple, but I do think it does need a bit of help both with purple from before and purple upcoming. But those are just my thoughts. Please let me know what you think about this, if you think I got anything wrong. If you are excited for this, I know a lot of people are excited for Shanks. Shanks really did come to promote Film Red out here. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.